Apologies in advance for the noisy owl. Hopefully she'll settle down shortly. She is actually part of the topic of this video, so rather important to have her in the video. Welcome to another episode, second episode in fact, of Ryan's Roundup here at Owl Adventures. I've been practicing falconry for almost 15 years, and that time I have been breathing, eating and shitting falconry in all different manners, so I have a lot of knowledge. And the great thing about falconry is that you never stop learning. Like most things in life, of course, any hobby or career you take, it's a never-ending journey of knowledge and experience, but falconry has that in its own special way, I feel. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about lots of different things that I'd like to discuss, including some of the comments I've had on some of my recent uploads, plans for next year. I've got some very exciting stuff going to be coming up. But first, I want to talk about this particular owl here. This is Scout, and she is a Ural owl, about 6 months old. I went out to get her from the aviary this morning. It's currently about 6 in the morning, so nice and early, and it's been snowing, and we've had a lot of cold weather this week, some really freezing conditions, but not any snow here in this part of North Yorkshire until this morning. So I'm possibly a bit later today going to take her out onto the edge of the Dales, and I've got some locations to film a video with this particular bird, and I'm going to do a focus on a species video. And those videos, because they're so information packed, always do well. I'd love to do one on the Ural owl, because when it comes to bird of prey display work, they are a rarer bird to see. Let's have a think why. Suppose one of them is because they are a Strix bird. So the Latin of this bird is Strix uralensis, and the Strix part is quite significant when it comes to training owls, because they're in the group of owls, which actually most owls are in, which are generally the harder to train, the more unreliable, clumsy, etc. I've worked with many great grey owls, for example. In fact, I've worked with 5, I think, in my career, and only one of those was a really fantastic bird that would fly anywhere to anyone, but he unfortunately died at about 9 months old. And that is a trait sometimes of the great grey owl. They're not the sturdiest or steadiest of owls. However, the breeder, Mike Horn, he's been breeding owls for, I think, about 40 years. He's based down in Norfolk, here in the UK. He suggested the Ural owl as a good alternative to something like a great grey, because they're just a bit more steady. And I think I agree. This owl has been definitely a better bird than some of the other Strix genus owls I've worked with, but not entirely fantastic. And that leads me on to the first point about this bird. I've got it flying free really well. I've been doing quite a bit of flying with it indoors recently, schools and things like that. And she's been actually really fantastic, really responsive, even flying up to some of the higher beams at the top of the room and coming straight back down to the glove. Fantastic recall. But what we have had recently is what we call aviary defensive behaviour, just in the aviary. So I'll explain what I mean by that. Essentially, owls and other birds of prey tend to be very territorial. This means they protect their areas of where they live from the dangers of other predators and things like that. And when you hand rear an owl and have it free lofted in an aviary, sometimes they can become a bit defensive when you go in. Now, usually they're okay with the people they know. As I am the person who hand reared this owl, you're watching my hand, so can you look? Nothing there. As I'm the person who essentially handled this owl, she's absolutely fine with me going in. In fact, I go in, I put my hand up, she jumps to it, and I can pop her in the box at that point. Sometimes it's a good idea to go into an aviary with a little piece of food to encourage the bird to fly to your glove for that bit of food, rather than you having to catch the bird if it's going to jump around a bit or whatever it might be. However, this particular owl, I've got it flying to the glove for the chance of something to eat. So I probably have to give this bird a bit of food, maybe 2 out of every 3 times I have it fly to the glove. Some of the birds I've got barn owls that will fly to your hand 5, 6, 7, 8 times before getting a bit of food, and then there are other birds that pretty much want something to eat straight away. So it's quite good that she'll do that recall, just for the chance of getting food, not always having to have food on the glove visible. But when other team members have been going into the aviary, we have, in the recent few weeks, noticed some issues where she has become aviary defensive. So they go in and she sees them and thinks, hang on a minute, I don't want you in here. And she bounces off them is the best way to put it. Feet first, bounces off. So they're not gripping, they're just bouncing off, a bit of a warning to say, go away. And this owl has drawn blood. I even have photographs, but I'm not going to show them. One of the team members showed me a picture of their face. So a couple of team members have had a little bit of a scratch. So what we've got to do now is when those team members go into the aviary, they've got to do two things. One, go in cautiously. So angle themselves a certain way, have their hand out, maybe actually have food on the glove themselves though. And secondly, a bit of PPE. So we do have goggles we can put on. We do have hats, jackets, that type of thing, just to cover the skin up a little bit, just in case she does behave that way. And then trial and error, you learn as you go. But I found that if we're going very slowly with her, she is okay. Now, aviary defensive behaviour is very normal in falconry practice, especially with free-lofted birds of prey, and it can happen with any raptor, an eagle, a falcon, and any owl. And the worst case I ever had was with Ollie, the European eagle owl that I had from 2 weeks old. I had to rehome him a couple of years ago. I did actually do a video on this particular bird, which I called I've Had to Make a Difficult Decision. And in that video I explained that he was aviary defensive, as Scout is a little bit, with people he didn't know in his aviary. And that's perfectly acceptable, because once out of the aviary, he was absolutely fine. And Scout here, as I've explained, out of the aviary with other team members, although can be a little bit feisty coming out the box, is generally fine for handling and even flying. I've certainly had no problem flying her, both outdoors and indoors. But unfortunately, this particular eagle owl I had, Ollie, he began to view outdoor flying arenas, different events and venues and locations, as his own territory. And I think he was protecting me, in a sense, because he seemed to latch onto me and he thought I was his mate. And that can often happen. In fact, Ranger, our Bengal eagle owl, which the last, or rather first Ryan's Roundup video was featured on, has started to hoot, especially as I walk by, and that is a bit of a signal that it's become imprinted on me, and they can mistake the falconer, the trainer, as their mate, essentially. Now, this isn't really a problem. It just means that they're going to be extra defensive when perhaps that person is around. And Ollie, we were actually doing a flying show, middle of August. I had some children out. I had Henrietta, who at that point could fly up and down from trees. The big eagle owl there, she flew over the kids lying on the floor. Ollie was on a perch, so I sort of flying them together. And just as the kids were running out of the arena, as it were, he then saw them. I saw his body language change very suddenly. He sort of went tall, his ear tufts rose, he was looking at the kids, and that's when I thought, oh no. But I couldn't get to him in time, and he set off, and he actually bounced off a couple of children. He didn't injure them as such, there wasn't any bleeding, but he did scare them a bit, and of course I had to do a whole load of what they call firefighting then. So I actually had Henrietta, the larger owl, brought her over to the kids and said, come and meet this owl, she's really friendly, she won't hurt you, because I wouldn't want the kids to then be scared of owls all their life, and of course, reputation as well, it's a terrible thing. So I had to make the decision there to move him on. But if we work with Scout here properly and cautiously, there's no reason why we'd ever have to rehome her. She's a striking looking bird, really are. I mean, a lot of the Strix genus owls, they are some of the most stunning birds. Things like this spectacled owl from South America, the Asian brown wood owl, absolutely stunning. And of course the great grey. There's just something about their face, their facial disc, the fine feathers they have on the front of the face there, the big dark eyes. But if you're going to handle one of those owls and fly one of those owls, you're kind of exchanging, in some regards, beauty for perhaps difficultness when it comes to the birds themselves. I have got with me a little list. Oh, sorry, did I make you made a jump? You saw that. The paper. It's just paper. Yeah. Owls don't deliver notes, do they? And behind me over here, we've got some astroturf. And this closed drying rack has become really useful. We got it about a month ago. And what we do is we use a lot of these astroturfs in the boxes that we have, a bit like the travel box behind me here. And it's a bit of a flaw for the bird if it jumps down, and also when they poop on it, we can replace it and things. And I'm just looking out the window, it is still snowing. And what we do is we give them a really good rinse down, we dip them in a solution of FAM 30, it's kind of a farming solution. It's a combination of iodines, it's iodine based, and there's a small percentage of sulfuric acid in there as well. And once diluted, it's safe enough for a large mammal, for example, to actually bathe in. Not that we're going to do that, I think it would sting a little bit, but you know, it wouldn't kill you. But obviously in its condensed form, it could be quite dangerous. But diluted down, it's actually really quite useful because it's not harmful to the birds. But of course we can dip the astroturfs in it, then thoroughly rinse them out, and then we drip drain them outside, and once they've drained off a bit, we then bring them in and dry them inside on this rack, and overnight they're perfectly dry. So we've got a cycle of astroturfs going round, because we can have 4, 5, 6, 7 bookings a day sometimes, multiple teams going out. I need a good rotation of astroturfs. So I've got my list here. I've also got a black coffee, which I normally have on a morning, so it's not for you, it's a little bit hot. I just ended up getting early this morning, got up early. My mind was going, you've got loads to do. I know next week I'm on displays 3 or 4 days of the week, even though it's nearly December, still loads of bookings, and I've got 2 days at home to get on with, you know, admin stuff, and I'm just going, you know what, I've not got enough time, but I'm going to do a to-do list and just try and get as much done as I can, because a lot to do. And we've actually got a training session with all the team members here in my conservatory next week, and the thing is, there's an expression in business mainly, and it works quite well in sort of falconry terms as well. If you're not training, you're not gaining. You could use that on your birds themselves. You're not training the birds enough, you're not gaining. But when it comes to staff as well, not just from the animal welfare point of view, but also from a point of view of delivering a great service when we're doing a school visit or whatever it might be. You know, I've got so many years experience. Even before I was a falconer, I actually worked part-time for 4 years in a high school as a performing arts technician. And I used to help teach music technology and things like that. And so I've kind of got a lot of experience actually in teaching, in a sense, on how to deliver information well to children and how to tailor suit the facts well as well. And one of the things I do when I'm doing school visits, I do actually ask questions as often as I can. So I'll say things like, right kids, can you tell me when owls are normally awake? And usually a hand will go up, oh, at night, oh, they're nocturnal. And I can talk about why owls are nocturnal from that point. But I can also talk about how not all owls are nocturnal. That's when the teacher normally goes, really, you know? And talk about diurnal owls or crepuscular owls or whatever it might be. So, as I say on my list here, training staff. We're going to be doing a session where I'm going to go through so many different things about how we run the business, systems and processes mainly. We've got a new system when it comes to the bird's furniture. We now have hooks like I used to have. So many things we had, and they just seem to drift apart and stop being done for some reason. So we've actually got a label on every bird's door, or next to the door of the aviary, and on the label it has the name of the bird, the species, but also their flying weight, because we don't want any of our birds to ever be lower than flying weight, especially more fragile things like barn owls. We're not hunting with our birds, we're not looking for hunting weights or anything, we are just flying them for display purposes. So that's one of the things I need to go over, but I'll also do a little quiz as well, and the quiz will have falconry and bird of prey facts. 2 different things. Falconry is the art of training birds of prey, hunting with them, etc. And then bird of prey facts are about birds in the wild, wildlife, how they survive, their senses, that kind of thing. Because it's really important, really vital that my whole team, and I've got about, hold on, how many have I got? 2 full-timers, 3 part-timers, half a dozen volunteers. I've lost track, what's that, a dozen or so team members actively in the team right now. And it's really important that they not only are great when it comes to the husbandry with the birds and the handling and flying of them, but also their knowledge, when people ask questions. And people are really impressed when they have such a great presentation given, or they hold a bird and they learn so many facts. And it's important not only that they know that, but they get it right as well. So the quiz is great because it helps me identify gaps in their knowledge. And they will then go, oh, I didn't know that actually about buzzards or whatever it might be. So we can really fill their heads up with knowledge as much as possible. And of course, personal development all the time. I have got staff going out doing extra courses and things. We've got them all they're all going to do their Raptor Award in the near future. Those that haven't, one of our colleagues actually went to the Loch Lomond Bird of Prey Centre up in Scotland there a couple of months ago, spent a full day working with Stuart, or Kevin, I think we were up with Kevin, who up there, Kevin Robinson, the Scottish falcon on Instagram there, and spent a day cleaning aviaries, helping with flying shows, and she learned absolutely loads. And of course, I do need to ask her to write up on that. We still need to write a little essay for her folder. But training staff's so important. Also important for our AAL, our Animal Activities Licence. But sometimes things can go wrong, and certain team members can make mistakes. Now, sometimes they've made a mistake, very genuine mistake, very honest mistake, even though they've been trained in a way that should have helped them avoid that mistake, and they learn from it. However, there are things sometimes people do that are really unexpected. And I had a team member about 5 years ago, and he was the nicest guy in the world, really lovely guy, really fantastic intentions, but he made some very strange mistakes. And he never lost a bird, he never had any birds die on his watch or anything like that, but I'll give you some example of the things he did. And it comes down to training. When someone does something wrong, people will point their finger at me as the head falconer and say, your fault, Ryan, you're responsible. And I agree, but there is a line that people cross. There's a line to cross where you go from things I'm training them, which is all in the training record, to things that I would never expect them to do. What am I expected to do? Am I expected to sit down and write a list of things that falconers working for me might do and tell them, right, don't do these things? Am I meant to write down, for example, if your falcon gets a little bit wet in some sudden rain you weren't expecting, don't take it into a fish and chip shop and say, can I dry my falcon under your heater by the door? There are a number of reasons why you don't do that, and that actually happened. Am I meant to write down on that list, if you're driving along the road and you see someone's broken down on a roundabout and you want to get out and try and help them, offer a tow or something, no problem at all. But don't, by the side of a busy road, think it's a good idea to get an eagle owl out and go, hey, do you want to see my owl while we're waiting? It's just not appropriate. Am I also meant to write down things like, if you're going to find an old barrel for water, then yeah, that could be very useful, but don't use an old barrel that once had something like bleach in it, or I think it was paraffin or something was in this bottle. Then he cleaned it out, but what he'd then done is he'd taken water, and he shouldn't have used it at all if it had that in. I didn't know he was doing this. He then took that barrel and put it on the display, used it on a static display, and then someone took a picture of the bird display, which I then saw, with in the background a bottle that said something like, petrol or whatever it was on there. You just blow me paper. It happens. To be fair, we're 20 minutes in. First time it jumped. If you saw the first episode of Ryan's Roundup, very different situation. So yeah, sometimes staff can do crazy things, and needless to say, that team member isn't now actually on the team. Eagles flying free progress, I've written down here. A sip of coffee. So, if you're familiar to the channel, you know we have got 2 Russian steppe eagles. We don't currently have any golden eagles or bald eagles or white-tailed sea eagles or anything like that. We have steppe eagles because they are more placid. They're big, but not massively heavy. People can handle them. They do weigh a good 8 pounds or so. They have a 7-foot wingspan. We have Storm, and where do you think you're flying? There's no perches in here for you to fly to. Just sit on my hand, please. Sorry, I'm just on to the owl there. We have Storm, she's 10 years old, and we have Athena, who's 4 years old. Now, they are not as easy to train as a Harris hawk, for example, but we have been trying to get their flying rate down to whatever it should be, possibly 7 pounds, something like that. And we've been doing some work on a crayon, and there's been some progress actually, where the eagles have been jumping to the hands of some of our team members. So we've done it a few times so far, and we are hoping that before the end of the year we can actually get the Eagles flying free, because next year we're going to be doing so many more flying show events all over the UK, and we'd love to have an eagle flying in the shows wherever possible, especially some of the very large arenas, the game fairs, the country shows, those sorts of events where you've got very large arenas, sometimes the size of a football pitch or bigger, and it's great to have a falcon flying in that, and it's great to have an eagle flying if you can as well. Yeah, it's great to have a Harris Hawk flying around a barn doing hand-to-hand, but if we can have an eagle flying, it will be a fantastic thing. And there are lots of other really exciting things happening next year as well. Certain things I'm going to announce very soon on this channel. I just can't announce them yet. Yes, I'm going to fly you in a bit, don't worry. It's very early. You ate last night. Sorry. I do wonder if you can see yourself in the phone, actually. Sometimes birds can. I don't know if you're looking at yourself there. I think you are. Are you thinking, oh, you're not that bothered? Okay. So, yeah, what was I saying? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, next year, two really exciting projects, actually. Two fairly big things, actually. And I am in the process of beginning that work right now. So just keep an eye on the channel, and I'll be able to talk about that in the near future. I'm also going to have, some really interesting videos coming up on YouTube. Focus on the Ural owl coming up as well. I'm going to do a video on how to spot different owl species in the UK, or rather how to identify them from territory, and talk about that a little bit. And I'm also going to do a video on my mistakes, because I realise that mistakes that I've made in falconry are not only very interesting and entertaining for people, but they're also really useful for people in falconry. So if you are just starting out, or you're on your journey of falconry, even if you've done it many, many years, you may find that learning other people's mistakes is a good way of you not making those mistakes. So I'm going to do part one, I think, of mistakes, going right back to my beginnings, of some silly things I did, and certain things where I just trusted the birds more than you should, really. And I think that is a good lesson. I often say, never trust the birds too much. Right, I need to get my bit of paper. Sorry, she's blown it over there. And I need to just check if I've missed anything, because these roundup videos, they're more the sort of video that's more about audio, and you can probably just stick it on the background, or if you're about to start a long journey, you could stick, I can listen to a podcast, for example. I find that very useful on long drives. Oh, right, yes, comments on videos, that's the thing I haven't mentioned. So I did a video recently called Why I'm Quitting the Pest Control. I had a bit of fun the other day there, actually. I was doing the pest control in the bus depot, and there's a gantry at the top. You can walk right across the top. It's a good 15 feet or so high. Maybe more, actually. And it's quite a good place to fly the hawk from, because it'll weave in between the pipes and the structures at the top there. But what I did try doing was, when there was no one around, threw a bit of food on the floor, he flew down to it and tried to get him to fly right up to me and try and catch it on camera. But he did, but then he kind of landed halfway, or not quite halfway, he landed sort of 2/3 of the way up and then did the last bit. But it did look quite interesting, different perspective, because I'm so used to having birds fly up to trees and then down to me, so having it the other way around, flipping it around, was really quite an interesting perspective. But yeah, there's some really nice comments on there, people really understanding it. One person putting, only £65 a visit, my jaw dropped. But this is the trouble with work when it comes to, subcontracting work down, the margin goes down and down and down. And we had a day, literally a couple of days ago, one of the lads was flying a hawk at a factory, and I got a message through, he's caught a pigeon, it's sitting in the roof. He came down after 3 hours for probably another 3 or 4 chicks, but it's just friction we don't need. We don't have that trouble when we do flying shows, at least almost never. And we certainly don't have it when we're doing a visit in a care home or a school, which we specialise in. In fact, if you go on our Facebook page, Owl Adventures, if you look at things we've been tagged in, at the minute there is just care home after care home after care home going on. You got an itchy face there? Care home after care home on there, pictures of us going in and doing that work, but it's just great work, we love doing it. So essentially, that video in the pest control, I'll talk about why we're focusing on doing more display work and a little bit less pest control. And nobody on there has really disagreed. They've completely agreed with it all. And even the company that, I'm not going to mention the name of them, the company that we're doing the pest control for, they actually have told me that they've actually sold their business to a larger company. Take a few guesses to which one it might be. I don't actually know. I will have to ask. So even they've decided it's easier to sell and move on. They're going to, I think, work for that company or something like that. So for them, that's the right thing to do. And the company that we've been doing the work for, when we first started, there was one site we went to, which is a very large warehouse for a big company. Not the one beginning with A, but something like that. And this particular warehouse, they had a hawk in there, male Harris hawk, that had been living in there for a number of months. So when we went in, we didn't really fly our own bird. What we had to do for 2 hours was try and get the hawk down. And we could always find him because even though it was a very big warehouse, he had bells on. And if you walk around enough with some rat on your glove or, you know, a quail or something big like that, it did notice it and start to come a bit closer. But it was really high up and never really came that low. The closest I ever got was actually tying a large white rat to some string. And I kind of literally just dragged it around because the floor was dirty, so the white rat soon became a grey rat, and I ended up washing my rat in the sink. That isn't a euphemism, that's literally what I had to do. So we got pretty close, but not close enough. The closest we ever got, though, was when I tried flying one of my own hawks, and then this lost hawk, who was obviously living on the pigeon in there. So the company loved it because they had permanent pest control. It was probably eating 2 or 3 pigeon a week, which isn't a bad number to keep the pigeon number down, really. But yeah, we flew another hawk in there, and he actually followed us around. He was getting really close and really curious, and at one point he landed on a pallet that was about 10 feet high. Excuse me. And I said to the person who was escorting me around, oh, if only we had a stepladder right there, I might have been able to grab one of those flying jesses. I don't know if he's still in there or not, because that particular site was taken off our calendar eventually. I don't know what happened to that one. I'll try and find out and let you know in an update. So before I go, I'd like to say that if you have enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And also, please give me some direction on what to do with the channel. There are some videos that I know always get good views. Anything that's really information-packed does really well because people are learning so much. But you know, this particular video could be the new Owl Diary because it's quite easy for me to go around and film little bits and pieces as I go and just kind of add them as B-roll onto a video where I just sit and talk with an owl in the hand or a hawk on the hand for 20 minutes or half an hour. Just let me know what you would prefer and what you enjoy watching, and any video suggestions as well, please let me know, because I'm hoping to have a really great future with this YouTube channel, but it really does depend on you, the audience member. So if you can let me know in the comments, that would be really, really fantastic. You can, of course, almost email, I'll say that again. You can also email us at info@owl-adventures.co.uk if you wish. That's info@owl-adventures.co.uk. And any questions or video suggestions or comments at all you want to give privately, you can send it there. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to get on now and get ready for the next bit of filming and the next bit of flying of birds and things, even though it's still snowing.